Hi, everyone, and welcome back to GirlDad. I'm Abigail Frechette.
And I'm Peter Frechette.
And we have an interesting topic for you guys this week. At
Well,
least
it's
I
always
I
it's
find
always
it
objective, but
interesting.
or
So
subjective, I guess is the appropriate word. But
yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
I think it'll be interesting.
I think it'll be something a lot of our fan base might be into. So I personally have been like watching every sports documentary out there on Netflix recently.
Yeah, you
Um,
really need to get a life.
yeah. Good job. Anybody hiring, let me know. Um, but I've noticed like a lot of patterns relating to kind of like injuries and the kind of the systems at hand with like the corporations and the industries at large. And I guess I want to start this by saying like we are sports fans, both of us, and like we don't want sports to end. We just like kind of want to acknowledge that there's like giant corporations who make millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars off of these athletes. And I think Dad would agree, like there could be more care put into their health, safety, and well-being. And
Well,
there's
I'm gonna before you go any further, I have
yeah,
you put words in my mouth there, and I'm not
sorry.
sure that I like that, but I will say that I will be probably a little bit more of a blue sky person on this
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
Um, but I don't disagree with your general prognosis, but I
Yeah.
think that I will be injecting some positives into this as we
Yeah.
go along.
And I think like I'm gonna probably make some like blanket statements or things, but I am aware there's exceptions. Like I'm very aware there's exceptions, but I think it's more in the sense that like it shouldn't be the norm that this is the way the teams and the system operates, right? Like it shouldn't be the way that it shouldn't work where the exception should be on the coach being of a good nature. It shouldn't be, do you know what I'm saying? Kind of, it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah.
exception
The
shouldn't
exception
rely
should be
on
the
a good
bad guy.
actor. Yeah.
The,
The exception
yeah.
should be a bad guy.
Right.
Um, so I think like I don't know exactly how we're gonna kind of go through this.
Yeah. That was interesting because you went there, and that's taking me to somewhere completely different from what I
I
thought we were going to
well,
talk
I think
about.
we're gonna just start with some of like the biggest patterns of industry of the injury we see in sports in general. I feel like that's like a good place to start. Do you feel like that makes
Yeah.
sense to
Absolutely.
so one of the biggest ones is CTE, which stands for chronic traumatic and and
Encephalopathy.
and and is that how you say that?
Enc-
And and
Encephalop. I have
and
no idea.
yeah, and
Encephalopathy. Encephalopathy.
encephalopathy. Yeah. So this is basically a brain disease that happens from like multiple head traumas. We see it a lot in football players who get a lot of concussions. Huge thing in WWE, obviously, when your like head is being slammed into concrete multiple times, that's gonna leave a lasting impression. Um, and as well as other athletes, but those are the two sports where we see it most prominently. So there's kind of a couple of cases I just wanted to talk about here because I think they stand out to me is that there's been unfortunately multiple suicides due to CTE because the athletes basically CTE for a really long time has not been taken seriously by particularly the NFL. Um, Junior Seau, I believe I'm saying that right,
That is
um,
correct.
took his own life with the intention for his brain to be studied because he felt that um, he knew there was something wrong with him, but he felt that it wasn't being acknowledged by
Well,
people.
we should mention Junior Seau was a football player,
Yes.
linebacker, perhaps one of the. Um, I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame, but he was probably on a Hall of Fame track
Yeah.
as a player. Did play a little bit with the Patriots towards the end of his career. I believe
Yeah.
most of his career was with San Diego,
Yeah.
a city that no longer has a team. But I mean, he clearly liked to hit people, and that
Yeah.
was whether he liked to or not. That was his job, and he was very good at it.
Yeah.
And tended to lead with his head, shall we say? So
Yeah.
I just want in case people don't know who he is,
Yeah.
that is who Junior Seau was. But continue, please.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like he basically he had depression. Um, and he knew there was like a reason for it, and he felt like it was connected to the profession he had. And he felt that this was the way to draw attention to it. Um, a similar thing happened more recently that was a little more disturbing, and um, I don't obviously condone this person's actions because it led to harm of others, but a someone who was never, I believe, in the NFL, but was on track to be or he wanted to be in the NFL.
I, yeah, I think that's a fairer statement.
He
That
played
he felt.
football trying to become a professional football player and was then he received a lot of head trauma because of it, essentially. Um, he shot up the NFL offices here in New York fairly recently in the past year. Um, and again, his intention was in the note that he wrote was also, I have CTE. I want this to be studied. I want the NFL to take note of it. Obviously, don't condone those actions, but I think there's a connection there of like the NFL isn't paying attention to this, and I want my brain to be studied for it. Um,
And just to not necessarily wrap that up, but his name was Shane Tamura.
yes.
Um, just because I think we should mention it, who he was
Yeah.
when he shot up the building.
Yeah. Um, and another person, there are obviously others, but I don't want to stay on CTE too long. But another person who had CTE, and again, I don't condone the actions of, was Aaron Hernandez. Um, and I think that with Aaron Hernandez, there's a lot of factors that, made him who he was and do the things he did, but I do think that CTE may have played a role in the extreme aggression, the kind of depression aspect of his personality. And those are aspects of CTE. And, when he passed, they studied his brain and he had CTE. So I do think, this is something that the NFL needs to take a little bit more seriously and perhaps, do something more about in
Well,
preparation for their players.
okay, that here's my first blue sky moment.
Please go right
First of
ahead.
all, Aaron Hernandez,
Yeah.
my blue sky moment is not in regards to Aaron Hernandez, but just this little
Okay.
background on him.
Yeah.
Tight end for the Patriots,
Yeah.
played football, college football
Yeah.
in Florida, was from Connecticut,
Yeah.
was a great football player, and ended his life in jail for murder.
Yeah.
Um, so that's quickly, you can look him up, and there's plenty of information about him.
The
But my blue
documentary
sky,
on Netflix is very good, well done, has a lot of information.
but my I've got two blue sky moments on this, and just
Yeah.
as reactions to and efforts to try to deal with this.
Hmm.
without without, as you say, we are sports fans, and I like watching football.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, maybe there's three now that I think about it. But one uh, very personal to me is Buddy Tevens, the former Dartmouth football coach, who was the quarterback when I was at Dartmouth. Uh, he, along with engineers at Dartmouth, created a robotic tackling dummy that um, could simulate what a running back or a receiver would do to work on practicing tackling. So you were not having, as he said, the only live tackling that his players would do would be 10 times a year in the games that they played. Everything else was with these dummies. So there was no player to player contact. They were learning the skills. They were not having those head to head collisions.
Hmm.
So that was a protective situation. Second thing is guardian caps have been used in practice at the NFL level for a long time and probably in college as well. If you don't know what they are, you can look them up, or you can watch an NFL game and probably see three or four guys wearing them. They're basically just like Nerf helmets, for
Yeah,
lack of
they're
a
like
better.
extra padded kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was not aware of that players in certain positions are required to wear them in practice.
Mm,
Not as many guys wear them in games. I think it's an aesthetic thing.
yeah.
And the third thing that I would say is that at least they're trying to come up with ways to reduce the collisions in the sport is the change in the kickoff rules that came in, I think, last year. If you have not watched an NFL game, they still kick off from the same place, but the instead of everybody lining up on the 35-yard line and the kicker kicking it to the other team's end zone,
Mm,
um, they now the kicker's still kicking from the 35, but his team is lining up at like the 40 of the other team. The other team is lining up at like the 30, their
mm,
own 30, and the kicker, in order to prevent the ball starting at the 35-yard line, if they kick it in the end zone, they get the ball at the 35. If
mm,
they kick it, if they have to kick it between the goal line and the 20 to prevent that from to have a kickoff return. So you don't have that 60 yards of guys sprinting down the field for these amazing collisions that you have on kickoffs. I think it's helping. It's an interesting effort to try to change the game for for protective purposes. I think the other two
okay.
things that I mentioned are probably more
Yeah.
substantial in that way, but at least the leagues are trying to do something about it. But
Yeah.
and
No, I
also
think that's
I did
good.
want I also want to mention I believe, and I don't know if you came across this in your research, that I believe at Boston University is where they have
Yeah.
a large program to study CTE, and that has
Yeah.
been going on for, I'm going to say, at least 30 years that they have been researching this and trying. And I believe Junior Seau kind of left his brain to that group.
Yeah, so
Um,
that was actually something I believe that kind of came out of Alzheimer's research, which is interesting. The woman who, um, I believe she actually kind of accidentally started that program. She was working on Alzheimer's research and somebody's brain, she found CTE when it wasn't really CTE at the time. Like they didn't really know what it was. There wasn't kind of a whole thing for it. Um, and she kind of engineered this whole program around it. And yes, his brain went there, Aaron Hernandez's brain went there. And I believe that that's where I think that's like the leading facility to study this. So yeah, if you have like any if you want to look into like any further of this stuff, I would imagine there's like more information somewhere on their website or something. I don't know. Or if you
Yeah,
look up like
yeah,
BUCTE, I'm sure there's like articles.
sure.
Um, but yeah, um that's where that's been done. And I do, while we're talking about this, there is someone else involved with all of this that I think is really interesting to mention, and that is Chris Borland. I don't know if you've ever heard of Chris Borland.
I don't know that I have.
So Chris Borland is a former professional football player who is still alive, everybody. Um, new thing for us here. Um, he was a 49er. He played college football for Wisconsin. And he was drafted in 2014 and he retired after one season because he was concerned about like kind of long-term brain damage from football. I believe at the time he was the first professional football player to ever do that. Just to ever like become a professional football player and just be like, you know what? I'm actually really nervous that I could severely threaten the rest of my life by doing this. Um, and I just think that's kind of fascinating because I think, um, given who he is, he had a little bit of a different background than some other football players, which I think we might get into later on in this episode when we talk about some other stuff. But um, I, I think that like he, I don't know, I guess there's kind of a pressure of like, this is what I've given my whole life to do. And like, what else am I supposed to do? And I think it's really cool that he was able to just realize like, it's not worth the rest of my life when I'm only, what, probably only like 21, maybe 22, to like sacrifice everything for this. And I think a lot of people aren't really given that option. Um, and or if they maybe have that choice, the alternative isn't great. But he's done a lot of work, even though he doesn't personally have CTE, he's given a lot of work into talking about CTE. He himself is in the Aaron Hernandez documentary, talking about the importance of like why the NFL needs to do more, why every sport needs to do more to like protect their athletes, both on a college level and a professional level. So I think it's really cool that he's kind of like pivoted to doing that, I guess. You know, I don't know. I think that's a really big decision and I think it's great. But yeah, I just wanted
Awesome.
to
I knew there was
mention.
somebody. I knew there was somebody who had done that. I didn't know the name, so that thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Um, but yeah. So anyways, I guess we'll kind of stick with football here for a little bit. Something else I learned about in the Dallas Cowboys docu-series that I want to mention that made me really concerned just about like everything was this drug called, again, I'm so sorry because I don't know how to pronounce this at all, but it's keto Rolac, or I think that's like the or
Toradol, I see that you have
Toradol.
here, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So they were talking about how like they would just get that injected like at practice all the time, like or when they were on the sideline of a game and they got injured. And it's basically just like a powerful prescription anti-inflammatory drug. Um, and you're only supposed to take it for like 5 days in a row for like severe post-surgical pain. And they're talking about how like I think that I mean most of the documentary was focused on the 90s, so it was like Irvin and oh, what's the running guy's
Emmett
name?
Smith.
Emmett Smith. They were talking about Emmett Smith like almost broke his ankle and he's just like on the sideline and they're just shooting him up with this stuff and he's just like continues to like make plays the rest of the game. And I was like, that seems just incredibly dangerous. So yeah, I didn't love that just as like a safety thing. I don't know if you know anything more about that, but I just like I didn't do a ton of research into it, but that just seems really dangerous.
Well, I'm not going to. I don't know a whole lot about that very specific thing, but I will go
Yeah.
back to a book that I read that maybe we've talked about before. I don't remember. The in my mind the greatest one of the greatest baseball books ever written, which was Ball Four,
Yeah.
which was basically a diary of the I'm going to say the 1968 Seattle Pilots season. The
Okay.
Seattle Pilots eventually became the Milwaukee Brewers, as I recall. They didn't last
Right.
in Seattle for very long. The book is written by Jim Bouton, who had been a kind of a phenom pitcher for the Yankees, and he was when the Pilots became an expansion team. They got to pick players from other teams who were not protected. Jim Bouton was not protected, and ended up on the Pilots with a bunch of other veterans. And um, the reason I bring it up is one of the things they talked about a lot in that book is the uh, medications that the players would take,
Yeah.
which were uppers and
Yeah.
greenies, as they called them, and
Oh, yes.
different things to try to get themselves through a 154, 162 game season, whatever it was at that time. To just you're playing every day, and this is what you do, and there was some alcohol involved as well, but
Mhm.
this was it's fascinating, but I'm making it uh, clear that you know this is what they've always done to try to continue to play
Yeah.
and to play as well as they can. And I know you have an interesting thing in the outline about steroids, and you write
Yeah.
you have American Gladiators there, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
what? That's where we're going with steroids? I'm sorry, we're not
Well,
going to go to baseball.
no,
Um,
that was just a side note. I was gonna talk about that, but we can absolutely go to baseball. I do just want to know, I just remembered something also about Toradol when you mentioned alcohol, because in the Hernandez documentary, they got some of the phone call recordings of him to like people when he's like in prison. And I remember there's a conversation I can't remember exactly who he's talking to. I think it might have been someone he played football with either in college or in high school, but he said Toradol and weed. Like those were the two things that like get you through. So clearly Toradol was something that he was also, you know, highly reliant on as well. Um but it's also like you go to things that an average person, like weed is something that like an average person would use to kind of cope with pain, perhaps. Like you said, alcohol is something like, so I think it's interesting, like you're mixing things that, pain medications that, I don't, Toradol, it's not considered an opioid, I wouldn't think, right? It's not. Because I
not that I
imagine
know of.
that would make it you would slow down, right? Like that they wouldn't be giving you something like that because that would be like a um what's it
I'm
called?
going to
Like
admit that I'm completely outside of my area of expertise when you
that's
start
so
talking about
fine.
this
But
stuff.
I that's okay. But I imagine they wouldn't be giving you anything that's like an opioid because that would slow you down, right? Like that would um if they're giving you
Right.
something during a game, they don't want to give you something that's like gonna make you sleepy or like anything like that. So, or lethargic. But if you're like having this stuff that like makes you feel no pain and then you're adding on top of it, I mean, some of these guys are doing coke, they're drinking alcohol, they're smoking weed, like they're taking on like what we as normal people can get addicted to, and then they're adding on like these intense pain medications too. It's like that's a lot, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you want to talk about baseball and
Well,
steroids?
just talking about, so it, there was I think, a difference in kind of what we're talking about with the greenies or with the Toradol, and how
Yeah.
that was I don't want to say recovery situation, but it was
But yeah, it
a
is.
way to a way to keep performing, as opposed to
It's
what I
like a
believe with this.
legal thing.
Right, but I
Yeah.
believe with the steroids that they were doing in the '90s in baseball, was a lot more focused on actually changing your physical nature,
Yeah.
with human growth hormones. And I think because I am not a physician in any way and have done very little research, I'm going to surmise that a lot of this came out of, perhaps, uh, East Germany, doing stuff with their Olympic athletes and trying
Yeah.
to change their uh, physical nature.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about with cyclists and doing blood doping, where they're taking their blood out and then
Mhm.
putting it back in. Just, I mean, it's crazy stuff that people are doing to get an edge. And the human growth hormones stuff, and you look at images of Barry Bonds and how his physique completely changed from
Yeah.
the time when he came up as a speed tremendous athlete, outfielder, run, hit for power. And he could do it all, but he was not a big guy.
Right.
And by the end of his career, he was, uh, all of him had grown, and especially the telltale sign, his head had grown.
Yeah.
Um, and and it got to the point, I believe, that, you know, was it a scandal? Yeah, it was a scandal. But the number of people that
The
were doing it,
Elko
I don't
lab
believe
thing.
we'll ever know how many guys were doing it. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you hear people say, "Well, if I'm not doing it, I'm going to fall behind.
Right. It was
I
like
need
to
to do it to
even
keep up."
yeah.
Right, right. So, it's just one of those things that, we're talking about drugs and stuff in, performance enhancing drugs, PEDs, that, in all sports, exist in all sports. So,
Yeah.
where do you draw the line from a recovery drug to a enhancement drug? And that's,
Yeah.
it's tough to decide where to draw that line.
Yeah. I mean, I the reason I put the American Gladiators thing was because I learned like through that the like signs of how you know someone's on steroids versus like just naturally becoming bigger. And they were very surprising to me because one of the main signs is that they're getting back knee. So like acne on
Oh
your
yeah,
back is
for
like a
sure,
sign.
absolutely.
And then men get breasts. So men get like small pockets of like flesh under their nipples, I guess is like a thing. Um, so that I don't know, that was just interesting. Also, great documentary on Netflix about that one. Because I feel like that honestly, kind of takes everything we're talking about here today and just like really small scale because it's like one show and obviously it's not like multi-million dollar organization franchises, but just is like if you like project that onto all these giant corporations, that's basically what's happening to all of these things. It's just like really small scale. Um, but it was fascinating. But yeah, so that's just why I like mentioned it there was like I don't know, and they also talked about the ways that like the their organization like the obviously the show wanted advertisers and the advertisers didn't want to be associated with steroids. So the show would be like, we're going to test you so that we can like prove to advertisers. But the show wanted the athletes to keep being on steroids also because it helps the show. So they would like help them pass the test kind of. And I feel like that's not, I'm not saying baseball and franchises did that, but if you're talking about how, like, if all the athletes are doing it, you got to compete. Is it possible that, you know, franchises were like acknowledging of that? Like, if we want to be in this league, everybody's doing it. Do we have to do it too? Kind of a thing. And again, I'm not saying that's what was happening, but, you know, it's possible.
Absolutely. And, we can go into why they're doing it and whether it's
Yeah.
the, uh, I mean, again, you're talking about the microcosm of American Gladiators, and okay,
Yeah.
you have the corporate that wants it to continue because they
Right.
want to make the money. So they're keeping a blind eye to what's happening so that they can continue to make the money. And then you have the athletes who are doing it because they want to continue to play so that they can make money. I mean, it's all, not surprisingly, all
Yeah.
wrapped around money. It's not for the love of necessarily for the love of the game. It's for
Exactly.
the you. I mean, for I'm going to say that for some guys it is. It is about I
Yeah.
want to be the best. I want to
Yeah.
be the best. But in order to be the best, I need to do X, Y, and Z to
Yeah.
compete with the guys that are um, appear to be better than me.
Right. And then the
And
system lets them do that because the system is about the money still. Like the
right,
system isn't going to stop them because, you know, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's all very interesting like how so many like I said, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because like I started with the WWE and then I watched the Dallas Cowboys thing and I was like, this is the same. Like these are all the same. Like they feel a little different, but they're kind of all the same. Like the fans maybe want to pretend they're different or the people on the top want to pretend they're doing something different, but there's so many similarities here. So something that I do want to talk about that is a little different is artificial turf. So when artificial turf started in like to enter the scene, it was essentially carpet on cement, which as you can imagine, really, really bad for athletes. The the example I have as being the worst is something again I have from the Dallas Cowboys documentary. Michael Irvin, this is the injury that caused him to retire from football. He took a headfirst dive into the ground, which caused him a pretty severe cervical spine injury. He did note that he thought that if a different coach was coaching him, that he would have been given Toradol and told to keep playing, which I did think was a little frightening. But he was taken off in an ambulance, and I don't recommend going to watch this injury because I was really disturbed watching it. Um, Now there is like an added layer of kind of rubber. Like there's more to what artificial turf is. but when asked which surface do you think is more likely to shorten your career, 90% of NFL players responded with artificial turf. And when players were asked if the turf versus grass debate is overblown or a real concern anonymously, um, 80% of players believe it is a real concern. So I think that that should tell the NFL that they probably should not allow turf anymore. And I think that they have the money to do that. And like, there's enough turf fields that that's like a huge problem. Um, I
I do
also want,
want to
yeah,
before we get too far. I just have a story because
please.
I just think this is so cool. Arizona in Phoenix, they play in a dome.
Yeah.
And so I would think that one of the pushbacks on natural turf is the
Mm,
dome stadium.
yeah.
Um, and I remember going to the Final Four in Phoenix, and of course it's a basketball court that's in the
Right.
middle of this dome. And as we were driving around there at one end of the dome, outside is the football field, a natural grass football field that they can slide in and out so that
Oh
they
my
can
God.
let the grass grow
Yeah.
outside, and then
Wow.
when it's time for the game they bring it in, and so they're
Yeah.
playing on natural grass. I don't know how
Yeah.
deep the soil is beneath it,
Yeah.
but I got to believe it's better
Yeah,
than
it's
the
got to be
turf.
better than turf.
um, so anyway, I just thought that was
Yeah, that's
interesting that
really
they do
interesting.
that.
Because I imagine that would be the main concern of those stadiums in particular, of like, what do we do? We don't like, we
Well, that's
can't
I mean,
grow grass in a dome, but
but
yeah,
at the same time, I know that like in college athletics, this is uh, not not a cash cow sport, but like for field hockey in
yeah,
high school and college,
yeah,
um, the schools that have turf fields
yeah.
are more likely to get um, postseason tournaments and host postseason tournaments because the the on a turf for field
Mm,
hockey, the ball goes so much truer,
yeah.
um, and
But
so
that's also a
for
much
that,
less of a contact sport. That's like very different
not a
situation.
lot of falling down,
Right.
and
You're not hitting your head
yeah,
on the ground. You're not slamming another player into the ground head first
that's
necessarily.
true. I do have a going way back to the '80s. Um, I forget. I went when I was working at the Big East. I went to the sports information director's annual meeting or whatever it was in Boston,
Yeah.
and so I went to it. And one of the things was at the old Sullivan Stadium, which preceded Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, and it was a turf field. And it
Mm.
was the first time I'd ever been on a turf field, and we were playing softball on the turf field,
Mm.
and oh my God, the ball was so fast.
Yeah.
It was like, no, no, I don't want to do this. No, we don't. That's fine. Um, it was, but I will say, having been on turf fields since then,
Yeah.
and just walking around. I mean, they have one over at Babson, and
Yeah.
just walking on it, it is such a completely different feel
Yeah.
than what it was back in the carpet on cement days.
Oh, yeah.
They have improved it dramatically.
Yeah.
Um, whether or not it's enough, I don't know. I do like the whole idea of the in and out grass that you can do in a
Yeah.
dome. But I also
Well,
understand.
so the reason I think that, first off, I think if your players at that level are saying it's a problem, You should listen to your players. I mean, they're the ones who are facing it day in, day out. They're the ones who are gonna face long-term consequences because of it. Um, yeah, basically, that's my main feelings on the issue.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
But
But I do think I do
yeah,
want to just as a selfishly,
yeah.
uh, I think they can all for football. They should all get rid of turf, except for Boise State, because Boise State's turf is blue, and it is one. It's just such a colorful field that
I
you
mean, they could
cannot
dye their
get rid of
grass
that.
blue every day.
It
Like
just
every
would not be the same. It would not
okay.
be the same.
Or alternatively, so I want to talk about soccer. And for our international listeners, I apologize, but because we're talking about a lot of sports here, I will be calling football soccer today. So soccer, turf is generally extremely disliked. So Premier League soccer, absolutely not. No turf allowed. But something that a lot of soccer stadiums do is that they have natural grass, but they have a kind of synthetic grass added to the natural grass just to keep it incredibly lush. So this you're still having like the natural soil bed, but you're adding a bit of syntheticness to like keep it really like fresh, I guess is the best way to put it. And obviously, with the weather over there, that makes sense. It's quite bad and cold, so they need that. So I think that that would be like a great alternative for, you know, some of the stadiums here could do something like that. Um, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of reasons to switch away from artificial turf, and there's a lot of alternatives, and there's a lot of like science backing not having this anymore. And there's, like you said, I feel like we've talked about a lot of ways to like, if any issue, if someone was like, well, we can't do it because we have this, I feel like we've solved that. Like, I can't think of anything we didn't just discuss that like someone couldn't be like, well, you can do this. You know what I mean?
Right. Or just keep
That's my
thinking
thought.
about what you can do. Yeah, I agree. I agree
Yeah, and they
completely.
all have the money to do it. You know what I mean? Um, so sticking with soccer, I do just want to really quickly. Just gonna talk about one Fulham injury really quickly because I think it wasn't something that happened at Fulham, but it was something that happened to a Fulham player. Um, I think that soccer is interesting because obviously it is a contact sport and they wear little to no padding. Right now, for those of you who don't know, there's kind of a debate over most players don't even want to wear shin guards anymore, and that's literally the only padding they wear anymore at all. So a lot of them wear padding, like, or some of them, not a lot of them, some of them still wear like full shin guards, but some of them are now wearing shin guards that are like the size of, I don't know, like a softball maybe. Um, and that's crazy. They shouldn't be doing that. But there is a player, Raul Jimenez, who is on Fulham, and he wears something that I was very surprised to see when I first became a Fulham fan. I was like, is he wearing like an eye patch on the side of his head? Like, is this something he does? Like, what's going on here? So obviously, being me, looked it up, and he actually suffered a pretty extreme skull fracture in a game. He like head on collided with another player and his skull fractured. It's a miracle that he is still alive. And actually, I believe the doctor said because the injury itself was captured on camera because it happened during a game, that helped them know what to do to like save his life. Like if it hadn't happened that way, they would kind of be unsure of like the angle to approach the situation at, which is crazy. But yeah, so I mean, soccer is a crazy sport to play because, like I said, there's very limited padding that happens. There's insane injuries. The amount of blood I see in these games a lot of the time is really something. Um, but I did want to go, I feel like this is an interesting time to go into average career length really quickly, just because soccer
Well,
has the Oh yeah,
before you
sorry.
do that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of chime in on, you're talking about what they're doing with the shin guards and how they're
Mm.
reducing things, and um, this is something that uh, kind of has gone in both directions, but I
Yes.
see it in football much more often now. It used to be, so when I was growing up and playing football, I don't think our what we wore for protection was that different than what they were wearing at every level. So
Yeah.
you had thigh guards and you had knee pads in your pants. You inserted them into your pants, and that was going to
Yeah.
protect your those parts of your body. And if you look at football players now, I don't know. Maybe they still have the thigh pads. They definitely don't have the knee pads. You look at them and it looks like they're almost wearing shorts, and
Yeah.
the pants are just coming down to the knee or above the knee, which
Yeah.
I think is crazy. Um, and the other thing that I've noticed a lot recently is, you know, they have the mouth guards, and the classic way of the mouth guard was that you would have it attached to the band that came across the front of your
Yeah.
helmet, and then you just pop it in your mouth. There's no popping in the mouth going on now. The things just hang in there, and guys are running around,
Yeah.
or the quarterback's taking it and stick it in his helmet, and you never see it again. So that's something that I thought about. But going in the other direction is with like hockey.
Yeah.
Um, you know, they've tried to do things with head injuries, but you go back to um, goalie masks.
Yeah.
It goalie masks did not exist until I looked this up because I was kind of shocked. Uh, the first guy to wear a goalie mask regularly was Jacques Plante in 1959. Hockey had been being played for 40 or no, probably close to 100 years at that point.
That's
And I looked it
crazy.
up, and Jacques Plante wore a mask in practice. He started wearing a mask because he got hit in the face with a puck, and
Yeah.
he would wear it in practice. And his coach told him that he couldn't wear it in the game because it was going to affect his peripheral vision. And so he took a shot off his face in a game, might have even been a playoff game, and he needed stitches. And this was the back in this day, there was no backup goalie. Uh, so
Oh God.
Jacques Plante said to the coach, after he got stitched up, he said, "I'm not going back in the game unless you let me wear the mask." And that's when he started wearing the mask regularly. And now you see it. Um, they all wear it. I assume
Yeah.
it's required. That it's changed dramatically. It's kind of in the shape. It used to be just this mask that was the shape of their face and just covered
Yeah.
their face perfectly.
Do they wear
And if you
helmets?
not then, players
Oh,
didn't wear. Nobody wore a helmet.
okay.
And the my favorite goalie mask story is if you go back and look at pictures of a guy by the name of Jerry Cheevers, was the goalie for the Bruins back when they were really good in the early 70s. And Jerry Cheevers on his mask would draw a scar every time he got hit in the mask. So his mask is just
Oh, yeah.
covered with all these scars. It's really cool. Love Jerry Cheevers. No, the helmet thing. They brought in helmets gradually over time, and I'm going to say in the '70s, and um, and then after that, and so players who had been playing without helmet were grandfathered in. They didn't have to
Right.
wear one if they hadn't worn it when they came in. And then they put in plexiglass masks on top of like face shields attached to the helmet. And
Hmm.
again, if you came in before those were required, you didn't have to wear one. But now I think pretty much and everyone
Yeah.
does wear them. And I actually think the rules are that after you play in the league for a certain amount of time, you can take it off. But I don't think anybody's taking it off anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so that was my those are my equipment
Yeah.
stories.
Well, I do want to say with the soccer too, like even though it's interesting because the shin guard thing, that's like a player choice, right? Kind of how you're saying the I guess they're kind of choosing whether they can take off the mask part or the
The
what is
shield,
the
yeah,
shield part
the shield, yeah, yeah.
after a certain amount of time. But they are the there are certain they're adding certain things like for example, and I feel like this is a little it's like you only just added this, which I only just learned that this was just added because for most of the time I've been watching Premier League soccer, like it's been a part of the game for me. But if someone gets injured in the head, you have to stop the game for like 2 minutes. No, obviously not stop the clock the way like you don't do that in soccer, but like the the player has to be examined for 2 minutes. Like he can't go back on the field. Um, that's like a new thing. So it's basically to make sure like they're not concussed. Which is kind of crazy that that wasn't a thing to me even like until I think that's like within the last 2 years that has become a thing. Um, but yeah, I mean these guys get really beat up and it does. I think I guess I was texting you about a game I was watching. I don't remember what game it was, but I was just like, we talk about I feel like it's always a conversation of like who's the best athlete because of like all time, right? For a long time it was like Tom Brady's gotta be like the best athlete. But then people were like, well, is Simone Biles like a better athlete than Tom Brady? And I was kind of like, she probably is. But like these soccer players, like what they're doing, they are getting beat up and then they're like running back, like up and down the field, and they have like nothing on them, and like they're not protected. I was like, this is insane to do as a sport. And I don't like it is crazy because I still love the sport. I find it incredibly interesting to watch. But there was a part of me that like is like, is this really bad that I'm like enjoying watching this? Like, is this really dangerous to do? Anyways, I guess that's just my own moral quandary that I'm dealing with. But it did make me think like these are intense athletes. Like what the recovery that they have for themselves to be able to like do this and not be just incredibly exhausted after 15 minutes of the way that they play this sport is insane to me. Thank you guys for listening to part one of this episode. Dad and I just couldn't stop talking, basically.
Well, we got a lot to say about this, and so yeah, come back next week and hear more of what we have to say.
Yeah, but we will see you guys then. If you have anything you want to share with us, please email us at girldad@pcast at no,
GirlDadPcast@gmail.com.
thank you. And we'll get back to you next week. Bye, Dad.
Bye, girl. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, rate us, and leave a review.